All right, howdy, folks. Welcome to Talking Paranormal with the Old Man. And as always, I am the Old Man. Hope you're enjoying your weekend. If you're residing down south, Georgia, Tennessee, Mississippi, you guys are dealing with storms and a crap load of rain. Up here in Michigan, it's cold and snowy, but that's to be expected. Is Michigan? It is winter. So hope you enjoy your weekend. What's left of it? Some of us have a 3 day. Uh, Hopefully you survived the Super Bowl parties that you all had. I'm just happy the Chiefs didn't win. Just tired, not to get political, but I'm tired of the whole Kelsey Taylor crap. It's it's crap. Anyways, I do want to make one correction on my previous podcast about the letters to the editor. I did slaughter when I was talking about the paranormal investigator Hans. I slaughtered his last name. I wasn't even close. It's Hans Holzer. I was trying to say Boltzer or Botzer or something like that. I don't know where the hell I came up with that. But it's Hans Holzer. He was a paranormal investigator, wrote a crap load of books, and he, I guess, developed a lot of the techniques that we use now in paranormal investigating, ghost hunting, whatever you want to call it. So I apologize to Hans. I know he's not with us no more. He's long gone, but it's Hans or Hans Holzer. All right, this episode is going to be about the dreaded Ouija board. Dun, 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 dun. I don't have the scary music or I would have played it. Uh, when we do, as you guys know, we do presentations, usually October, but sometimes it's earlier than October. And I always touch bases on Ouija boards. I explain why we don't use them, why you shouldn't use them. And, people have questions, things like that during the presentation. So I figured I would clarify, give you a little history of the Ouija boards and why I guess, some people don't like to use them. And then as usual, at the end, I will give one example and then one actual investigation. Now, Ouija boards are used, before I get into the history of it, is to supposedly, I'm doing the air quotes, communicate with the dead through the Ouija board. I'm sure you're all familiar. You have a planchette, not Suzanne. That's a joke for the old people. If you get it, you will laugh. And you have a board. It has the alphabet A through Z. Yes, no, hello, goodbye. I'm sure like I said, you've seen them before, or you know of them, and you use it to communicate. Well, the problem is it doesn't always work out that way. So I'm going to give you a brief history of the Ouija board, not a long history because it's you know just a recap, I guess, and then I'll get into some of our examples and some of our investigations and stuff. Now, Ouija boards, they're in I guess technically they're the same thing as like conjuring up a spirit, doing witchcraft, black magic, that kind of thing. It's a different, I guess, device. I guess usually with a black magic, witchcraft, you obviously don't have a board, but you use other chants and prayers and what have you to conjure up spirits. Now, you don't have to have just a Ouija board. You can have a pendulum is the exact same thing. Yeah, you hold the pendulum at the end of the chain, and supposedly if it turns one way, it's yes. If it turns one way, it's no. That's one other way to communicate with the spirits. So it's in sense, it is a Ouija board per se. Now, the main thing about the Ouija boards, black magic, witchcraft, the pendulum, is all you have to do is invite a spirit in, and by these means, like I just mentioned, you are inviting the spirits in. So I think that's where Ouija boards kind of get a bad rap. But anyways, the Ouija board, I found this on Google. I'm not this smart. I wouldn't. Sometimes I don't remember why I get up to walk into a room, so there's no way I was going to remember all these details. So I did a Google search because we all know Google is your friend. And here are some of the pertinent information. I did write them down. It is on Google, so I'm assuming it's okay for me to use without getting into trouble. No copyrights or anything. It was on the AI. What was it? I have my laptop on too here. It was on the AI overview. Artificial intelligence overview. So I think I'm safe in using it. The Ouija board, as we know it today, was invented in Chestertown, Maryland in 1886. Ouija was coined by a medium, Helen Peters, way back in 1890. That's when she, I guess, developed the idea of the Ouija board, I guess, or coined, because she didn't actually invite it. It was coined by her. It was patented in Baltimore in 1890. Now, I do know. Oh well, let me. I'm jumping ahead myself. So the Kennard Novelty Company, I believe I'm saying that might be Kennard Novelty Company, manufactured the first Ouija board. William Fuld, who was an investor in the Kennard or Kennard Novelty Company, as an investor, he popularized the board. He actually marketed the board to catalogs, including Sears. Now, if you think about that for a second, he put it in the national catalogs. So you have J.C. Penney's. I'm assuming Woolworths, um, Macy's, because I think they were around back then, I believe, and Sears. I mean, we're talking big companies here that have in their catalogs advertisements for Ouija boards. That's kind of scary. It's kind of like now where okay, you can be a teenager. You can obviously buy a Ouija board. They're not age sensitive. I need to see ID for you to purchase this, ma'am or sir. But you can also download apps on your phone that are Ouija boards. So you're not old enough to vote. You're not old enough to drive a car in certain cases. But you can summon the demon on your phone with the Ouija board app. There's something seriously wrong with that. And I know it's advertised as entertainment, as family fun, but okay, so I I don't know if you would call it experimenting, but I used a Ouija board at one time. Back when I was growing up, people across the street, friends of mine, we were up in their bedroom and we used a Ouija board. Now, I don't remember anything that happened. I don't remember, anything following us home or following me home. I don't remember, anything happened. I don't even remember if we even made contact with anybody. But, you know, again, everyone has in either the opportunity or have had. You're a teenager, small town, even a big town, college student for that matter. It's a, Friday night, Saturday night. You're all kind of freaking bored. I know. Let's have some beer, some brewski, and let's communicate with grandma who died 5 years ago. I want to talk to her. Again, not a good idea. So, to get back to the history a little bit, newspapers of the time reported on the Ouija board's use for communication with the dead, predicting catastrophes, and solving mysteries. Now, that being said about communicating with the dead, the Ouija board became popular and the interest grew after World War One. Well, yeah, you had a lot of men that were killed, so it's a natural, you know, timeline or progression that people that lost loved ones in the war would want to try to communicate with them. Now, this would coincide with the 20s, where spiritualism was at its height. I mean, you had seances, communicating with the dead. Harry Houdini did that. I'm not for sure when he did it, but I think it was in the 20s or 30s or 40s, somewhere in that time range. He he had a secret word with his wife when he died. If they communicated with him through through a medium or a psychic, he would give her the code word, and that would confirm his identity. So because a lot of times in Ouija boards, or I'm assuming black magic, witchcraft too, but specifically Ouija boards, whatever you bring across or comes across, through the board, can misinterpret who it is, because obviously you can't see him. It's not like the spirit is in the corner of the room and, oh yeah, I'm your grandma, but it's a dude. Okay, you can see that. When you can't see them, he could say that he's freaking George Washington, and you would have no reason to not believe him, or her for that matter, or it for that matter. So you have to be careful. Okay, so and then the Ouija board. Now this is going back to the history, and again this whole evil thing where Ouija boards have a reputation for being used for evil and to contact spirits, which I already touched bases on that too. However, here's the interesting thing. It says, however, studies show that the Ouija board is based on, and I'm going to slaughter this freaking word, ideomotor phenomenon, where people will move the objects unconsciously. Now, I'm sure everyone's heard a story or whatever, where you have three people or two people using the Ouija board, and then you have to have one person do it. I'm sorry, you have to have more than one person to use the Ouija board. I don't know if it's more energy if you have more people, but it seems for everything that I've heard or read over the years that you have to have at least two people. Three or four is okay, but you have to have at least two people. So a lot of times you'll see them on movies or on these ghost hunting channels on YouTube, where it would be like, is there there's two people in the room that both have their fingers on the planchette. Is there somebody here? And it goes to yes. And the one guy says to the other guy, oh, dude, you moved that. No, I didn't. I didn't touch it. I swear. So that would fall under the ideomotor phenomenon, if I'm saying that correctly, where people move objects unconsciously. That's interesting. I have not heard of that before. So that is kind of interesting. And again, I'm reading off my laptop here. That was my glasses. I'm an old guy. I have glasses on to read here. Okay, so I'm going down here. Okay. So yeah, so basically this idle motor phenomenon, and I'm sure I've said it like three different ways. I don't know how to say it. I've never heard of it before. It's that that phenomenon. It causes people to make involuntary movement in response to their thoughts, ideas, or expectations. It's also known as idle motion response, IMR. So that is kind of interesting that they're saying that that's a possibility, that it's an involuntary by one or two people that is using the Ouija board at this time, that they are involuntarily moving it based on their thoughts. Like, for example, and I know that's mumbo jumbo, big boy words. I understand. So basically, what it's trying to say is let's say, for example, you come to the Ouija board with a friend. You so want to communicate with your mom, for example. It could be anybody, your sister, your best friend, your brother, your uncle, your dad, grandma. You get the picture. So if you come to the Ouija board with a preconceived thought that you want to communicate with your mother, is it possible that because you have that preconceived thought or involuntary thought, that you are involuntarily moving the planchette? So when you ask questions that only your mom would know, like, mom, are you here? If it goes to yes, is that idle motion phenomenon that they're talking about? It sounds reasonable to me. It sounds plausible. So I'm not sure because I've not heard that expression before, so I'm new to that. I honestly I don't have an answer for that if that's the reason why, or is it actually you're communicating with the spirits? Either way. So I have, I guess, seen on TV like most of you have, or I have read that you have to say goodbye in a session before you close the board or get away from the board. You're supposed to keep your hands, actually your fingertips actually, on the planchette during the actual Ouija board session. It's supposedly bad luck. Again, I've only experimented one at one time. That was, God, years ago, like years ago. So I'm talking. So I'm basically what I'm telling you, my opinion, and again, it's just my opinion, is what I have seen on TV and I have read. I have not experienced this personally as far as using the Ouija board. Now I know just if you bring a board out and hold the planchette, you're perfectly fine. You're in not any danger to summon up a demon, summon up a devil, anything. You are perfectly fine. It's when you put your fingers on the planchette, two or more, and you ask a question. As soon as that planchette moves, you're inviting spirits in. Now, if you're like me, you're thinking, dude, and I call it everybody dude too. Dude, you just said that idol or idometer phenomenon that the person, one or two of the people could have preconceived thoughts or that they want to happen. So is it possible that is being moved by this person's involuntary thoughts or actions or movement? So is there really a spirit coming across? That's a great question. I have no answer to that. I have to do a little bit more research on that. So, and I'm not trying to skirt it. I don't know. It seems plausible from this idle motion phenomenon thing that it's very possible. But I'm sure you've had friends or even yourself, family members that have used the Ouija board and have had things happen. So I guess it's going to be a fine line. So basically, the concept is, you have like I said, the Ouija board, the planchette, and you ask questions. Now, if this is truly a board to communicate with spirits, then all the spirits need is an invitation. They say if you hear, like if you're at home and the front door, someone's knocking on the front door, and they continue to knock, you look on your ring camera, there's nobody there. If you're in an apartment with a peephole, you look through the peephole and there's nobody there. You open the door. I've heard some people say, or I have read too, that that's letting the spirit in because the spirit just can't come into your house unless they're attached to you. If they're attached to you, all bets are off the table. But in order for them to come into your house by themselves, you have to invite them in. And I have a story about that, and I will touch on that at the end of this podcast. So it's all that it takes is for you to ask a question. The planchette moves, the spirits come in. Now, one thing that I did want to touch on too, William Fald, who was his Ouija board was the talking oracle, is what he called it. We actually have one version of his Ouija board, the talking oracle. Got it off of eBay. Got a pretty good price. And we were in Salem, Massachusetts, with the family. So it would have been, pre-COVID, probably 2014, 2015. And we were in Salem and we went into an antique shop and they had a Ouija board. So we had to pick it up. I mean, that's just how it is with us. So I have a Ouija board and a William Fald talking oracle board. Now, William Fald, he only had the rights to the oracle board, Ouija board name. I want to say I read someplace he had that until the early 1940s ish, and then his part or the Kennard novelty company they got bought out by Parker Brothers, or Parker Brothers bought the rights to the Ouija board. So from, I want to say, the mid 1900s, I'm sorry, 1940s, like 47, 48 ish, Parker Brothers had the rights to the Ouija board. And then that's where you've seen the box where the two kids are sitting there with the planchette and everything. Yeah, but it's only a toy. Ages 8 and up. Like I said, 8 and up. Okay, so and then we've all heard things, but then supposedly when you're through with the Ouija board, you're supposed to say goodbye. Which like I said, I've only used it one time, and that was I was a teenager, so I don't know about that. But from what I've read and what I've seen, you have to say goodbye. Now here is the caveat. Okay, we have been asked, how do you get rid of a Ouija board? Okay, here's where it gets tricky. If you believe, okay, let's say we have one side that you believe is real, it conjures spirits. Then you have side B that, oh, this is a bunch of bull crap. It's just ways to scare people. Okay. I'm not talking about people B, you already have your opinion. If you're on people A side and you believe in Ouija boards that they can conjure up, bring spirits in, here's where the caveat happens. You can go out and burn a Ouija board. However, if if you did have a spirit or two that came across and you didn't send them back through the board and close the board out as far as making sure that they're back where they came from, and you burn the board, okay, you're screwed, because their only way of getting back to where they came from, you just destroyed by fire. So you have a lifelong friend now, buddy. I'm sorry to tell you that. Now, if you're able to get them to go across back where they came from, and then you burn the board, you're perfectly fine, because they are where they came across from. Now, unfortunately, the only way that you know if they're still here or if they've been close is if you're a medium or a psychic. Your average day Joe that is playing with the Ouija boards, which you shouldn't do, but hey, that's my opinion. Every average Joe, they're not going to know this. So if they burn the board, throw it away, again, the spirit's there until you can get a medium or a sensitive to come and get rid of the spirit. So, yeah. Okay. So now let me give you a couple of examples. When we do investigations, we get an email first, and the email is just we have a form, and they'll fill it out, the name, address, phone number, blah blah blah, and then briefly describe the activity. So then we take that, then we call them. Usually Brenda does, the wife. She calls them and talks over a little bit more about what's going on and stuff like that. Well, there was a house over in Heartland Township, over by Linden, Fenton, Holly area. Well, actually, not necessarily Harley, but I'm sorry, Holly, but Linden and Fenton area. It's a Groveland Township. And the house, when we talk to them, they go, "You're probably going to think we're crazy." And again, I've heard that before. We've heard that many times. But she goes, "We were in my bedroom." This is the mom talking. They're in my bedroom, me, my daughter, and I think it was her friend, and they're using a Ouija board. And she said at one point, the Ouija board flew off, it rose off the floor, it started to spin, and it went flying into a wall. Okay. Most average people say, "What have you been smoking? I want some of that." But you have to take people for their word, because you were not there to see it happen. There's a lot of things that people, oh, there's no way that could happen. And it does. Okay. So unless you were actually there and you actually had eyes on this board, coming up off the floor, spinning and then flying into a wall, you can't say with any certainty that that did or did not happen. That's you can't. So we did go investigation there, and we did find a couple of spirits there. We cleansed the house. which we can clean the house. I don't recommend the average person cleaning the house, and I don't mean with Windex and paper towels, Mr. Scrub, whatever. Cleaning the house with incense, prayers, holy water. And we don't go around in the name of Jesus Christ, like you see on TV. In the name of Jesus Christ, get out of this house, and you holy water and the cross and all that crap. It ain't gonna work because you keep, or the spirits keep their personality. So if you were an evil person in life, you keep that personality in death. So if you're obviously you have passed, if you're a spirit in this house, and if you did believe in God, you probably don't now because you have died. So doing this Jesus Christ thing, it's not going to work. It's not. We actually did an investigation. Actually, it was a haunting episode that we did where they tried to clean the house themselves with saying a prayer, and it actually made things worse. And then that's when they contacted us. So I know from experience over the years plus investigations that we've done that you can make it worse if you try to smudge your house yourself or clean the house yourself. So that's what happened in the first example. And the second one is we did a house in Ypsilanti years ago. And and this falls on don't open the door because the spirits will come back in. They need an invitation. We basically went there because she had a son and two younger daughters. And they called this out because they would be in one of her daughters' rooms and close the door, and they were laughing and talking and all that stuff. So we asked, her mom asked who you playing with, and they go grandpa. And she's like, well, that's, she told us, she's like, well, that's fine, but grandpa died 10 years ago, so I need you guys to come out to see who it is that they are talking with and who's influencing them. Well, her son, I believe he was about 12, 13 years. Like I said, I'm bad with ages, but I'm thinking 12 or 12, 13 years old at the oldest. And his attitude had changed. He was being more aggressive at home, picking fights with his mom, hitting his mom. He was causing fights at school. So we basically came out, did our whole thing, I mean, our investigation. And at the end of the investigation, I asked them if they wanted me to smudge the house. And they, yeah, please do. So I smudged the house. And when I got to her son, I put holy water on his forehead in the shape of a cross, and I smudged him with incense. And I will never forget his look. He had the most pissed off look that I ever seen a kid have. And he had that expression like, dude, that's not going to help me. That's not going to, change me. He had just that look and that aura like, ooh, dude, chill, you know. So we had left, and before we left, I had told the homeowner, and I'm not going to name any names in case they're listening. I don't want to bring attention to them. So that's why I'll say people that are friends of mine, one of our members. I'm not going to name any names just to keep people out so they don't get attention drawn upon themselves that I drawn to them. So I told the homeowner, I go, okay, it's not uncommon when we smudge a house or clean a house to have some kind of residual energy. And 1 or 2 days after we leave, if you have, small amounts of activity, that is to be expected. If the activity stays after a couple of days, call us back. We'll come back out. We must have missed something or a spirit or something. So we got an email from her back about 3 or 4 days later, and she said, I remembered what you guys told us about, the activity. She goes, we had a few things, here or there. And she said that one night, she goes, I was woken up about 3 o'clock in the morning, 3:30 in the morning. I know that's cliche, but that's when she said that she was, woken up. And again, I'm not going to say her name, but I have to say a name to make sense. So let me say Annie. I'll say Annie. So the homeowner's name was Annie. It's not, but for this, it was. So she goes, I'm sitting, in bed. My husband's asleep, and I'm hearing like someone has pebbles or stones, and they're throwing it against our house. And we have aluminum siding. So I'm hearing it go ping, 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 ping. And she goes, I swear to God, she goes, I was wide awake and I hear a voice from outside saying, Annie, open the door. I want to come back in. And she goes, I remembered what you had said about not opening the door or nothing or, inviting anything back in. So I didn't. I went back to sleep. And she said a day or two later, the house was calm again. No problem. She didn't hear any voices, calling her name, wanting in the front door. And she said her son, his attitude has changed 100%. He's now back to how he was, being friendly to his mom, friendly to his sisters, helping out at school. And it's just so I'm like stopping short of saying that he was possessed or a possession had started, but it, I think it was pretty close. And then one other thing also was he had drawn a picture of a pirate, like a pirate flag, and he had put it in his mom and dad's bedroom behind the door. And here's where it gets weird, okay? I mean, we've seen weird on investigations, but this is weird, okay? She asked him why that picture, and he said, well, Mom, a kid at school, a kid at school said that I have spirits in our house, and if I draw this picture and put it where I put it, it will prevent the spirits from coming back. Okay, I don't know about you guys, but that's like that's all, folks. That's like Looney Tunes. Okay, you have a kid. I mean, I'm not making fun of the situation, but you have a kid tell you at school, tell your kid about this. Like, and he said I didn't tell anyone else, Mom, outside the house, and we sure didn't. So yeah, that was just one of those weird things. Like, okay, what the hell's going on? Is there a greater force here involved? So that happened. The house is clear, and unfortunately, and it kind of makes me mad is they had moved out, or I'm sorry, they had moved away to Kentucky, and her husband was a truck driver, so they moved because of his job, not because of the activity. So I get an email from her. She goes, hi, again, not her real name. This is Annie. You came to our house in Ypsilanti, blah blah blah. Just wanted to touch, bases on you. Well, as luck would have it, if you didn't have bad luck, you wouldn't have any at all. My hard drive on my laptop took a crap, so I lost her email. I didn't have time to respond to it before my hard drive crashed. So she's out there probably. And if you're out there, Annie, I'm sorry I didn't gaff you off. If you're listening to this, send me an email. It's the same email address. I would be interested to get back in touch with you. And then lastly, I want to touch on one other not experiment experience that we had. Over in Grass Lake, there was a house that used to be a funeral home, and this falls not so much Ouija boards, but Ouija boards you can conjure a spirit across to come to you, and this is the same thing, but it was black magic and or witchcraft that happened. But it's the same principle, so this falls under the Ouija board topic of this podcast. And it was an old funeral home. It had sat idle for years, and we were asked to come and investigate it. Okay, if you have a chance to investigate a funeral home that's now a home, do it. Drop whatever you're doing. Make time out for this. Do it. So we went. We were actually there twice. The first time that we went there, we had a few things happening. And again, whether or not you believe you're a skeptic, that's fine. I am a medium. The wife is too. So we have Obelises. One of our members had Obelisk on her iPad. I was upstairs in this house. They're downstairs in the basement. And the person that had the iPad radios me because we have two-way radios. Instead of hollering and cry, "Hey, dude!" We just say, "Hey, dude, where you at?" I answer. It goes, "I'm upstairs." She goes, "Can you come down here, down in the basement?" And I'm like, "Why do you need me in the basement for?" And she said, "I on my Ovilus, it's an app on the iPad that your name, Brad, was said 3 times." Well, I'm always interested in meeting new spirits, so I went downstairs. And to go downstairs at that house is the actual dining room. There was a door. You opened the door. You went down 3 or 4 steps. There was a small landing. You turned to your right, went down 3 more steps, turned to your left, walk about 10 paces, turned again to your left, and walk down this long hallway. This eventually opens up into the actual basement itself. Now, the basement is where they would bring bodies in to bring the bodies up to the embalming room. And the embalming room, and this is the cool part, dude. The embalming room was in her bedroom. Her bedroom, the homeowner's bedroom, was the freaking embalming room. There was still, you can still see a couple of posters that were up, which I thought was cool as hell. You could still see the elevator was still there, dude. And I mean, it is just cool. I could glow all day about this investigation. I loved it as a funeral home. So, anyways, get back on the story. As soon as I walked into the basement part, not the hallway part, but that basement part, I was immediately surrounded by 3 spirits. And I don't mean they were like, you see in the movies, they jump me, they're punching me, they're stabbing me and all that crap. No, by I mean they surrounded me as I could feel 3 distinct energies around me. And I wasn't scared or anything, but it's like, okay, they were draining my energy really bad. And I'm like, I have to leave just for a second. So we had 3 team members there. I'm like, dudes, I'm going upstairs for a few minutes. I need to get some fresh air. I'll be back down shortly. So as I'm going back upstairs, the like I said before, you come down the stairs, you landing, you turn to the right, and there's 3 steps. Well, I was going up those steps, and they're wooden steps. And as I'm going up the steps, I get to the landing, and I hear steps behind me on these steps. So I'm thinking one of our team members is coming up with us, with me. They're coming upstairs with me. So I turn around. There's nobody there. I mean, I know I heard 3 footsteps following behind me after I had stopped. I heard, step, step, step on the wooden steps. So I went upstairs. I called our friend who's a medium. She's in Florida. Hello, I'm not going to say your name, but how you doing? It's been a while. If you're listening, of course. So she goes, you're using a lot of energy. I'm like, yeah, I know. She goes, and I asked her what, I told her it's an old funeral home, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what do you think is happening? And she said, I think when it was idle, they did some kind of, very possibly Ouija boards, but they used some kind of black magic or witchcraft to conjure up things in this house. So I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of cool. So that was that experience also. Um, I don't want to get too involved in that investigation because there's more that I can talk about. But I'm going to save that for one other podcast that I have in mind where I'm going to be talking about, our investigations and what happened. So if I talk about it now, I will take that off the table in a future podcast. And I don't want to do that. I kind of want to have a flow going. So that's my podcast today on Ouija boards. And again, this is strictly my personal opinions, no one else's. Not even the wife. She has her, I'm sure, her own opinion too. But this is strictly my own opinion, my own thoughts about Ouija boards. If you think I'm full of crap, that's okay. If you think I'm telling the truth, which I am, that's okay too. I don't care either way. If leave comments. I'm still figuring out my podcast page. Leave questions or comments. That's going to be a future podcast. As I'm going to answer questions live online here. So that's my podcast again. To quote that favorite song, but at the time I won't sing it. I heard people say, "Oh, dude, you suck." I know I can't carry a tune in a bucket. So until we meet again, stay away from the light. Goodbye.